Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Del Mar Community Center, for hosting me today. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you're all here. I would like to dedicate this talk to my brother-in-law who passed 2 days ago, my husband Payson's brother, who was a delightful human being, just what we all need to be, in fact. You know, he was always had his heart in the right place. He had his values of tolerance and love and kindness and justice. And the most admirable quality about him, which we all need to cultivate, is wonder and awe at even the littlest things of life. He would pick up a leaf and would just go into an ecstasy over how beautiful it was. So I'm going to be, I think I might want to, can I just use this? Is it working? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, all right. I'm going to talk about the privileges of aging, but I'm going to circle around to the privileges because, as I'd said in the invitation to this talk, that we can't get to the privileges of aging unless we first acknowledged its hazards and downsides, which we can't just push under the rug. We have to face them. We have to acknowledge them in order to find solutions to them. We cannot find solutions to our aging hardships before we acknowledge them. And so I acknowledge them by examining my life at a very granular level. I'm going to give you a personal example. Yesterday morning, I had a really rough morning. My neck was all constricted, my shoulders were tight, and I had a headache, and I didn't like feeling that way. So I did what I normally do when I don't like feeling a particular way. I examine myself, I retrace my steps, I find out what brought me to this place at this moment. So I retraced my moments and found 2 or 3 things that had caused this state of mind and this state of body. So, and the 3 things were, the first of them was I woke up feeling dizzy and unsteady. And so I'd just been diagnosed, amongst other things, with severe coronary arterial calcification, with a high risk of stroke and heart attack. And I also have GCA, which is, the arteries in my brain, you get giant cells in them, also high risk for stroke. So because when I was feeling dizzy and everything, it was like, is this it? Am I dying? You know? I mean, I was like a red fox in Sanford and Son. I don't know I think we're all old enough to remember him. It's like, this is it. I'm coming to you, Elizabeth. So we can laugh about it, but we also have fears. Fears multiply as we age. And the second thing I'd done was I'd spent a lot of time in bed doom scrolling. And, and it's all doom and gloom these days. So sometimes I lie in bed and I doom scroll beyond the necessity to scroll. Sometimes it's relaxing, but if you overdo it, it's like it gets you into a frame of mind where you're scolding yourself. So I had scolded myself for doing that. So and then the third thing I did wrong was I do my usual routine in the morning, my yoga, my breathing, my meditation, and I continued to push through them even when I didn't have the energy to do them. So, all of these are very good things to do, but there's a right time to do them. So I figured these three things out, and the fear of death is a common death. You can't, fear is an evolutionary necessity in the face of danger. If you fear that you're falling ill, or if you fear that you're having a heart attack, it's really important to call 911, go to your doctor, do what needs to be done. But after a point, after you've done all these things, fear only hampers you. It puts you in a straitjacket, and it makes you, it terrifies you, and it ruins your life. So once you've traced back on all the things that have brought you to this very tense state, then you can do something about them. A chaplain in the news said that we die with a lot of regrets. All the people who die have a lot of regrets, and then we have other challenges like depressions and feeling irrelevant, for example. So I'll talk about fear first, and then I'll go into these other things. And there are many things we can do about fear. Let me just preface all of this by saying that as we get older, the irony is even though we are feeble, we have to become warriors. And what do I mean by warriors? We have to trust ourselves, know that we can overcome. It's a long journey, and we are on what I call a pilgrimage to ourselves, on which there are many dangers. So you have to become a warrior. Let me tell you a little story about an elephant. There was an elephant called Chandani, and she belonged to the emperor, and she had helped him win many, many battles, and he just adored her. And when she grew older, he retired her, gave her an entire estate and planted all the plants that she would have liked to have eaten, and just spoiled her that way. And one day, Chani decided she was going to go out off the compound, and she was going to, so she went outside and went to a pond to drink some water. And unfortunately, as she was drinking, the sand between her feet, started to sink. So she started to sink. And the people were very helpless, so they ran to the emperor and said, Chandni's sinking, and we don't know what to do, we don't know what to do. So the emperor rushed there, and he was distraught, And then a holy man came along and said to the emperor, beat the battle drums. So the emperor got all his drummers, and they started beating the drums. It was a war call, and Chandani is used to a war call. So as she listened to the war call, the drums beating loudly, she gathered enough energy and used her core because she'd had personal training sessions like me. So she used her core to lift her up and was saved. So the message to me always is we all need war drums, especially when we are sinking. We need to find ways to remember that we are warriors and we have to behave as warriors. And what do warriors do? They things on their path, demons, we meet a lot of demons on all these things, fears and depressions and regrets are all demons. And that, but they also have gifts to offer us. So, but let me talk about the demonic nature first before I go into anything else. Fear cripples us. And the way I handle it, there is a phrase in Sikhism, and I come from the Sikh tradition, and Guru Nanak has a phrase, conquer your mind and conquer the world. I mean, triumphing is a question not of everything coming to you that's good and right and wonderful. Triumphing is a way to create that and to create the resolution and the determination in your mind that you're going to conquer these things. For example, fear, the way I got over it yesterday was I said, do I want to live fearfully? And the answer was no. And so one way I conquer fear is I go all the way to the end of the fear. Why do I fear? I fear death. So ultimately, I have to reach a point where I accept my death and accept my dying in order to make peace with it. Because without doing that, I'm lost and I'm paralyzed. And also about the doom scrolling, I had been very unkind to myself. I had scolded myself, and I don't want to scold myself. I want to love myself. I want to honor myself, and I want to be very kind to myself. There's a whole chapter in this book called Loving Myself. And so you can scold yourself for doom scrolling for too long, but you have to forgive yourself for it. Recognize that doom scrolling for long periods isn't good for you, and then be kind to yourself. It's okay if I did it one day. I just mustn't make sure. I must make sure that I don't do it constantly. So, and the third thing was, doing my yoga, doing this, just put me in another state of torsion and contortion. So I had to realize to back off everything and breathe deeply. Now, we've all heard about breathing. I mean, it's become a cliche, breathe, breathe, breathe. But what we don't realize that we have to breathe with focus and intention. We can just sit, tell yourself you're being focused, and pay attention to the in-breath and the out-breaths, and focus on it, and I'm telling you, it's a miraculous thing. It really helps if you do it with focus. Now, I add another element to that. Breathing is a physiological, biological necessity, and it's, breathing deeply is, oxygen. It's a life breath. So I add the other element of I generally combine my breathing with God's name. I know God is another cliche, but if you want to think of God as this energy that has formed you and me and the universe and the world. We've just given it the name of God, but it's just this evolutionary, creative energy all around and within us. So whatever name you give it, from whatever religion, the only thing I would say to be cautious about is not the names of our prophets, but the name, whatever name you give it, of the energy that they all point to. So that, to me, having a spiritual orientation is a blind man's cane to me. Every time I have been down in the dumps and I turn towards it with intention, with supplications, with prayers, I am helped. That's an experiential knowledge and empirical knowledge. It works. Whether if you're an atheist and you just end up doing the breathing, that will work as well. And the third thing about, doing too much, and Lynn is here who talked to me about this, doing too much, and I'll talk about this later about doing too much. But you see, everything that we need to do as we age are good things. If you're doing yoga, if you're doing meditation, you're breathing, you're walking, you're exercising, they're wonderful things. But there is a time to rest. And you have to become aware. So this whole conversation is about becoming aware of your inner workings and being cognizant and paying attention to where you are at that point in time and what you can do about it. So if your body is saying, I want to rest now, that's what you need to rest. You know, lots of people denigrate the body. It's something, it's a shell. We're going to leave it behind. It's not immortal. Our spirits are immortal. Spirits are more important than bodies. There would be no spirits without bodies. So our body, we have to nurture our bodies. And only you can know how you can nurture it. I know I have learned, I've taught myself to know how I must nurture my body. And one of them is listening to it. Our body is wiser than our minds are. And it's all one anyway, our mind and body, and, so the hip bone is connected to the thigh bone, etc. You can sing that song to yourself to know that we are organic wholes. We're not parts. We're not fragments. We are whole. And so one of the things about resting I want to tell you is that I have, for the past several months, I have gotten rid of my depression because I realized that every time I'm depressed, it's because I'm tired. I can see it. Every time I become depressed, I know what I need to do is rest. Somebody said the opposite of negativity is not positivity, it is rest. When you find yourself being negative, coming down on yourself, giving yourself a hard time, you just need to back off everything and rest. And that's another thing you have to learn, to back off. Because nothing is more important to us at this stage in our lives than ourselves, our lives. So resting, I mean, it's a whole book. I'm writing a book on the art of resting, but that's a whole different thing. And you have to recognize why you don't allow yourself to rest. Because you're afraid, resting means death, am I dying? You know, or there's all this guilt around resting. Shouldn't I be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing that? And our culture doesn't support going slow and resting. So it's resting is one of my mantras. It's very important to rest. So to acknowledge, you know, the downside, you can find solutions to it. I'm feeling depressed, I need to rest. I'm fearful, I need to rest, I need to see that thought through till the very end, which is, okay, I'm going to die. It's to avoid that I'm going to die that we do most of the things in our lives that are destructive to us. So you see the emotion through. It's like Payson was very worried about his brother dying. And at one point he accepted it. And it still doesn't circumvent the grief and the terror of losing someone you love. But all of these things become to see them through till the end and accept them. I mean, this applies to everything. This applies to all the things in life that we cannot change. We try to change. We must try to change everything we can, and that's the serenity prayer for you, right? But there was many things in life that I've had to accept that have released me. The acceptance of it has released me and allowed me to live my life as freely as I can. Because it's like, you know, don't try to live forever, you won't succeed. George Bernard Shaw said that. So the sooner we become aware of our mortality, a friend of mine who just went into hospice said to me yesterday, she said, you too have been served with your mortality papers. I thought that was a very potent image. You have to stand still to receive your mortality papers. You know, it's like a summons to the court. It's a summons to something. It's a summons. So that becomes important. So what all of this requires is intense self-examination. So, and what does self-examination mean? You know, the West has know thyself. East has the same thing. You know, you cannot find happiness unless you know yourself. You know your limits, you know your powers. And how do you know yourself? How do you self-examine? By retracing your thoughts. Was I unkind to myself? Am I feeling unkind, feeling terrible because I wasn't good to Payson and said the wrong thing? Was I not a good friend? And to acknowledge that. We cannot move forward without it. We cannot get anywhere without examining ourselves, without contemplating ourselves and the life that we're in and the universe that we're in. And so self-examination becomes extremely important as we age. And I'd mentioned a little bit earlier about being a warrior. And what a warrior does is have an arsenal of weapons and strategies and tools. I mean, my old age is all about gathering tools, strategies, techniques to make my life happier and freer at this stage in my life. So, what are these techniques? There's a long list of them, which I probably won't go through, but some of them are mentioned in my book. So, but I've already mentioned a few: breathing, focusing, turning to the spirit that has brought us here and that's going to take us away, that has given us the gift of life and given us all the things that we have. You know, and gratitude comes into that. If you start counting all the things that are right in your life, then there's no way you're going to be depressed and feeling self-pity. And you know, we cannot count the gifts that we're given. If you start counting the negatives of, like, well, I didn't fall down while I was walking here. I didn't freeze up while I was talking to you, because that's one of my fears. I might freeze up like McConnell or Biden, you know, they just froze. So, well, I'm going to talk. Am I going to like freeze up, you know? And so it's like, you know, you acknowledge all these things. You acknowledge all these things, you accept them, and you work with them. So that becomes really important. And I was talking about my arsenal, and breathing is one of them. Self-examination is one of them. And turning to the beloved is another one of them. Resting is another one of them. When I feel the need for rest, I rest, and I rest guiltlessly. I don't give myself a hard time. I'm not saying that I'm totally guilt-free. I'm not saying that I'm totally free of fear. I'm not saying that I'm the perfect enlightened human being that is talking to you about everything she knows and how wise she is. But she isn't wise. She's a fool. And I talk about my folly in the book. We are all human, we are all creatures, we all fail, we all fall. But we don't want to stay fallen for too long. We don't want to live in a snake of pits for too long. That's where the arsenal comes in. That's where the bows and arrows come in and the guns come in, you know. You find a demon of fear in your way, you blow it away. You can do that, you know, examining them and then also squashing them. You know, as soon as I find myself going in a particular strain, you need a lot of vigilance. You have to want to do this in order to do this. And you have to want to do this because you want your life and your old age to be happier. You want it to be more peaceful. So you commit to doing this because for your own good, because it is labor. It does take a lot of work. We have to commit to the work also. So let me tell you another little story that Payson loves and wanted me to tell it today, so I'm glad I found a context for it. There was a donkey who didn't like discipline, didn't like hard work. And so he, you know, his tyrannical master would load him down with sacks of salt, crystal, heavy, So he did this every day. Poor little donkey just went back and forth from the marketplace. Well, one day, and they had to cross a river in order to get to the marketplace. So one day, accidentally, the donkey slipped into the water, and he realized that when he got up, his load was much lighter. So he said, screw discipline. Every time he crossed the river, he'd make it a point to fall in and dissolve all the salt and move lightly towards the marketplace. His master caught on. One day, he filled his sacks with cotton wool. And you know what happened? He fell into the stream, and his burden became 100-fold. So when we don't commit to the work that's involved in having a happier, more peaceful old age or any age, this applies to adolescence too, then you have to do the work that it takes. You have to do the work. You have to, self-examine and build up your arsenal and breathe and take time out to meditate. Because not taking time out to meditate is you're actually sabotaging your time. You think, oh, meditation is a waste of time. Why should I meditate? But you don't realize how much energy meditation gives you, how much peace it gives you. So it takes work. It takes work. And it takes commitment. And it takes a certain, and what else do we have? We've got time. Most of us have time. Some of us think we don't have time, and then we rush, and screw ourselves up. We do too much. And Lao Tse says it's better to do too little than too much. We are conditioned to doing too much. The culture conditions us to do too much. I have to do this and that and that and that and that. And if I'm resting, why am I not doing all these things that make me feel productive and that make me feel good about myself? Well, it'll make you feel good about yourself till you die, So that becomes really important. So I'm going to turn it over to you to see if you have any questions. And let me just read a few things. I quote in the book too. I just want to read this quote by Robert Browning, which I just love. Grow along with me. The best is yet to be. The last of life for which the first was made. Our times are in his hands, who saith, a whole I planned. Youth shows but half. Trust God. See all, nor be afraid. And the second part of the stanza, which I also love, which he tells us to embrace all our suffering. Then welcome each rebuff that turns earth's smoothness rough. Each string that bids nor stir nor stand but go. Be our joy 3 parts pain. Be our joy 3 parts pain. Strive and hold cheap the strain. Learn nor account the pang. Dare never grudge the throe. He's telling you to embrace it all. everything that life gives us, especially suffering. Because, and I've just finished a book about it, how useful suffering is to our lives. It is essential. Suffering gives me, it takes me to a point, an extreme, where I have to stop and go back and do everything I can to stop suffering. I have a lot of insights from suffering. Guru Nanak called suffering medicine. Why is it medicine? Because it can heal us. And I want to tell you that I've had a very rough year last year. I was bedbound. I'm not the same person since. I am not. I'm happier because lying in bed gave me the time to mull all this over and realize how many gifts my suffering had given me. I can't even count them. I'm writing about them. I've finished the book in which I'm writing about how much suffering, how many gifts suffering has given me. And we've all suffered. There's nobody here that hasn't suffered and continues to suffer. And to go back a little bit to death, because we are all afraid of death and we have to say yes to death at some point. You know, we have a very small vision of what death is all about. Of course, I can't say I know all about what happens to you after you die. I don't. Nobody does. But one has enough experiences, one has enough intuitions to know that it may not be the end and the oblivion we make it out to be. That's a very small percentage of what death is all about. It's like Whitman says, I'm deathless. My life cannot be drawn with a compass. You know, he lives outside the compass of life. Where did we come from? Where are we going? We came from the invisible, we're going to the invisible. Well, what is this invisible? It's the energy we're talking about. It's the undying creative energy of the universe that we return to. We are like water. We can evaporate, we can become ice, we can steam away, but we're never destroyed. Water is never destroyed unless you pollute it. And we do a lot of that, God alone knows. So I wanted to end on that note. I mean, bring your imagination to bear upon your life and your death. Don't fear the imagination. The imagination takes us beyond death. The imagination is one of the richest faculties we have, and we must cultivate it. So thank you for listening. I'm sure that what I've said doesn't apply to all of you. Some of you might be the happy few that don't have to self-examine and just cruise through life. But I think that self-examination enriches all of us. It enriches the quality of our lives because we go into life in more depth. That's the purpose of our being here. We have to have a purpose. And the purpose is to know ourselves, to know life, to know the universe. So if you're on that path, you cannot go wrong. And always remember to be very kind to yourself. It doesn't matter that, yes, you do wrong things and there are consequences. And it's important to know that there are consequences. But after you know that there are consequences and you determine to, not go that route, love yourself, soothe yourself. Nobody's going to love you the way you can love yourself. And love yourself because you're worthy of it, despite all your shortcomings and all your, all the things that you feel are not right about you. So, on that note, go ahead.
Please remember, when you raise your hand with a question, you need to wait for me to get to you with the microphone.
I would love to know how you reconcile being a responsible person, wanting to be happy, wanting to go on with your life, but that constant responsibility to do more, to do better, to whatever. How do you reconcile that to become happier and breathe?
That's a very important question. That's a very important question. But there is even a more important question than that before you get into that. And the question is, how do you free yourself towards the later years of your life? How do you, and yes, I acknowledge that there are a lot of people have a lot of responsibilities. I know that Payson has had a lot of responsibilities with his brother. He's fulfilled them all. He has not left a grain of sand unturned to help his brother. And being responsible is a very good trait to have. But how do you reconcile that with your responsibility to yourself? You have responsibility to others, but what about yourself? Can you make a list of all your responsibilities? Make a list of all of them. I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. And then go through them and see which of them are not critical. Fulfill only the critical ones. The ones that you must follow through with. And we all have responsibilities to ourselves, to our people we love, to the people we know. We have a lot of responsibilities. But it is our work to free ourselves from those that are not necessary, but we have made necessary. So, it's like that sticker I saw, I'm spending my kids' inheritance, or some people say, somebody told me just the other day, says, my garage is full of shit, but I don't want to do it. Let others take care of it. If you're going to let that garage sink you, then you're not performing your responsibility to yourself.
It's pretty irresponsible to leave that garage to somebody else.
Well, that's your concept of responsibility, and if it's true for you, it's true for you. Okay? And then you must do that. If you feel that it's my entire responsibility to put every pin and nickel in its place before I die, and we do feel that sometimes we go around organizing, and I used to do that. I find a paper clip, I want to put it where the paper clips are, no matter where they are. They may be 3 stories down, but I go and put the paper clip. Now I toss them. I'm not wasting that much. I'm not throwing away a whole bag of paper clips that somebody else can use. And, needles, All the things, you don't waste a penny. If you find a penny on your couch, you put it where the pennies are. Only you can know which you can procrastinate on, which you don't want to deal with, because it feels like a burden. And we all know when something feels like a burden. We are burdened. Our lives are burdened. But every once in a while, we have to wade into the stream and let the salt melt away.
Thank you, Dad, for inviting me. My name is Aleppo. I am based in Surrogate, Dad, so I've known them for like 24 years. Kamla, you look like the goddess. You look so beautiful up there. Thank you for being impeccable with your words.
Thank you, Alefo.
I'm delighted to be here today to hear you. So I heard a lot of good things that you said about the aging and also the aging and
You don't have to worry about that, Alefo.
well, you got me thinking.
Yes,
I wasn't
good,
thinking about it before I was cruising through, but
great. Don't go away.
I wanted to ask a question because you mentioned, I like that quote when you mentioned that if you conquer your mind, you conquer the world. I like
Yes.
that. I also wanted to know a little bit about when you spoke about back engineering, like retracing the process of where you are in the moment.
Yes.
You know what caused it, all of that.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how to annihilate the demons, the process of annihilation? Because someone else told me that I don't have to destroy the demons, I have to learn to work with them and integrate them into the process of my life.
Thank you for that question, Alefo. And Alefo has been through a lot of suffering, and he is an example of someone who has risen above it. I mean, he's from the Sudan. You can imagine what he went through. He was one of the lost boys. And he's a motivational speaker now. And a very good he's learned a lot from his suffering. So how do you retrace and how do you deal with your demons? There was another part of your question.
The process of back engineering, and the second part was the demons.
The demon. Oh, yeah, the demons, and we all have demons. We have a lot of them, And you're very right that somebody said there are two ways of dealing with your demons. One of them is befriending them, talking to them. The Guru Nanak talks to his mind all the time, and he approaches his demons with love. He says, "Oh mind," because the mind is the one that destroys you, right? By thinking, "Oh mind, how will you be free without love? Oh mind, be still. Why are you going here and there?" He befriends them. He invites them to the table. And demons can't resist love, and they cannot resist invitations, okay? So, and your demons will serve you at the end. They can serve you if you control them. If you don't control them, you will be destroyed. And how do you control, like fear, for example? How do you control it? You control it with all your techniques and tools and strategies. But if you can't do that, then I really believe I can say, "Shut up, leave me alone. I don't want to listen to you." Not at this time. So it's two-pronged, the approach. One of them is, and the other one is love yourself. You know, your demon is really hounding you and you feel terrible because your demon is everywhere inside you and is making you do things you don't want to do. So you can say to yourself, I love myself too much to go there. I don't want to have thoughts that make me unhappy. I mean, which of us wants to have thoughts that make us unhappy? We don't. So Guru Nanak says at one point, your demons will shovel the ground for you so you can plant good seeds in it. They can become your friends. If you say, I understand why you're doing this to me, but I don't want you doing this to me, I banish you. I don't know if that helps. It helps me sometimes. And we always have things we have no control over. All of us. I was out of control yesterday morning. So, you know, and there are various ways to do this. Because our work, it's our work, Alepho. Our work is to walk this path, this pilgrimage, this adventure that we are on, you know, and do all the work we need. Introspection is a huge one. Self-examination is a huge one. So, if that helps.
Last question.
It's not a question. It's a moment of gratitude to you for an extraordinary hour where you've given me personally permission for unknowingness. The word that is embodied in all of your teachings that is so precious and valuable to me, and I imagine to the rest of us, we could be applauding wildly. So I could hear the applause through the silence of all of us in gratitude for the work that you've put in to be able to teach what you're teaching and write what you write. So I just want to give you a big hug of gratitude for this time, and for me personally, permission and humility for the unknowingness, to turn the unknowingness into a gift, to turn the knowingness into a gift, the discovery, all of it, just the permission to be human. So thank you, Kamla.
You got all my hugs. But you know, Ken brought up a very important point that I want to just leave you with. And he said, I've given him permission for unknowing. And I just want to mention Socrates again. He says, Socrates is wise because he knows he doesn't know. You know? And, you know, why do we fear death? We fear because we know that we're going to finish, we're just going to be ashes. If you just say, I don't know what happens to me after death. It might be the greatest adventure of my life. Who knows? So that is, thank you for that, Ken, because that, I tell you, I walk with unknowing. I walk with unknowing. I think, you know, sometimes I worry something will happen to Payson or, you know, something else. And then I say, I don't know that. I don't know when it's going to be his time or when it's going to be my time. I don't know anything. And as soon as you say, I don't know, space opens up. Space, huge space opens up. Possibilities flower. Okay.
So I spent the last 10 days with my brother as he was dying, sometimes round the clock. And he in the dying process, there's something known as their terminal restlessness, where the body is extremely agitated as it's dissembling. And there's something known as terminal, and it's painful to watch, and I'm sure it's painful to experience. On the other hand, there are moments of peace and stillness, and there are moments of what are known medically as terminal lucidity. And it looked like my brother was going to die last week, and he rallied for a bit, and he came out with this terminal lucidity. And I said to him, Larry, my brother's name was Larry, I said, Larry, what's happening? What's going on? And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, we're off to see the wizard. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. And he started laughing, and I started laughing, and then he faded back into his journey.
Thank you. Thank you.